is it?
It's Jill. Jill Foster. Please, open the door. Mr. Harvey, I must talk to you.
Yes, of course.
Peter's here. That's why I came. He made me come.
Peter Bradford?
Yes, he's just downstairs locking the car. He told me to come up because he was afraid someone might see me.
Sorry, Jill. We must talk to you. Both of us. It's very important.
Come in. Hey, you better sit down. You look as though you could use a drink.
I certainly could use
No,
one.
I don't think you better, Jill. The doctor gave her an injection just before we left the hospital. We've had a long talk, Mr. Harvey. Jill is now prepared to tell you exactly what happened to your parents after she picked them up at the airport.
Well, some time ago, shortly after I'd been arrested for shoplifting, I did another very stupid thing. I thought I'd got away with it. I felt sure no one knew about it. And then one day, a man I'd never met or even heard of started blackmailing me.
He made Jill work for him, deliver messages, contact certain people.
A man that you'd never met?
I've never met him. Not that I know of. He simply gives me instructions over the phone.
Is it always the same man?
Yes.
You're sure?
Oh, I'm quite sure. Because it's always the same voice, and he invariably uses the same name. Hogarth.
That was what you called my father when you picked him up at Waterloo.
Yes, I know.
Was my father working for Hogarth?
Yes, he was. When I called your father Hogarth, he knew immediately that I had a message for him. I then passed it to him on the way to the airport.
What was the message?
That Hogarth would be waiting for him at Heathrow and something very important had arisen, and your father's trip to Australia had to be postponed.
What was my father mixed up in?
Drugs. Most of the heroin destined for the United States used to be routed through Amsterdam. Well, Hogarth and your father changed all that. It's now brought to this country and dispatched from here.
As I understand it, that was what your father was concerned with on the day he was killed. After I picked them up at Heathrow, I drove them to a house in Kent.
In Kent, not Oxfordshire?
No, in Kent, near Sutton Valence. That was where your father collected the van. And then his destination was to be Dover, but unfortunately he never got that far.
Why Dover?
An agent of Hogarth's, a man called Marius, had just arrived from the continent with a supply of heroin. Now, he was a cautious bastard, and he flatly refused to deal with anyone but your father. Not only that, he knew the customs men were on the alert. So he insisted that your father picked him up in a van bearing the name Marius of Rye. He even sent Hogarth a photograph of the van. It was a name he'd invented for the occasion, a name nobody else knew about. Had your father arrived in any other vehicle, Marius simply wouldn't have contacted him.
Is this true?
I'm afraid it is.
You're very well informed, Mr. Bradford.
I'm merely repeating what Jill's already told me.
What else has she told you?
Larry Voss and Phil Morgan also worked for Hogarth, but there was a quarrel. They tried to take over from him.
So Hogarth killed Voss.
You were a friend of Phil Morgan's.
I helped him on one or two occasions, but for one reason and one reason only. I was determined to find out who Hogarth was. I thought once I knew who was blackmailing me, I'd be in a much stronger position.
To do what?
To break away from him.
Did you find out who he was?
No, I didn't. But about a month ago, I met a friend of mine, Chris Daly, in a pub, the Prince Hal. While we were there, Larry Voss came in, and he was then joined by a man called Walter Randall. After they left, a colleague of yours, Superintendent Harris, arrived. I don't know why, but I had the impression that one of them was Hogarth. That was why I took down their phone numbers in that book of matches.
Mr. Harvey, whichever way you look at it, Jill is in a very difficult position. Right from the start, Hogarth has thrown suspicion onto her. You remember the film Corby showed you? Now, supposing something happens to her. Supposing her death is made to look like suicide. What will your friends at the Yard think?
I don't know. What will they think?
They'll think that Hogarth doesn't exist. That Jill invented him. That she, and she alone, is behind this affair.
Then what do you suggest?
I suggest she goes into hiding. Now, before it's too late.
I think you told me you have a cottage in the country.
In Essex.
Many people know about it.
Very few.
Then take Jill there now, straight away.
I think that makes sense, Jill. I really do.
How long should I have to stay?
Until Mr. Bradford hears from me.
Very well.
I'll fetch the car.
Mr. Harvey, you have a visitor.
I'm not Mr. Harvey.
No? And who the hell are you?
I'm Harvey. Oh, I figure. Be my guest.
Look, I made a mess of this, okay?
What is it you want from me, Wilde?
You know who I am, then?
Yes, I've just recognized you. You're Tom Wilde. Superintendent Harris arrested you 3 years ago. When did they let you out? All right, who sent you here?
Look, I'm not talking. It's not on, no way.
Oh, I think it is on, Tom. If you don't tell me, I shall have no alternative but to use this. In self-defense, of course.
What do you mean, self-defense?
Well, by the time my colleagues arrive here, this room will be a shambles. And I'm sure your old friend Harris, who incidentally warned me of your visit, will very quickly weigh up the situation. He can be very perceptive.
What is it you want to know?
Who sent you?
A man called Corby. He gave me £500 to get certain information out of you.
About what?
A notebook belonging to your father.
Go on.
Well, Corby and his friends want that notebook. They think you've got it. Or if you haven't got it, they're pretty sure you know where it is.
Where did you meet Corby?
In a wine bar.
Was he alone?
Look, if we're going on with this, do you think I can have a drink?
Was he alone when you met him?
Yes. Yes, he was alone. We talked for about 10, 15 minutes, and then he was called to the phone.
Who was the call from?
He was in a booth. I didn't hear what he said.
I didn't ask you that.
A man called, Hobart.
Hogarth?
Yeah, that's right, Hogarth. Yes, it was after he spoke to Hogarth that he offered me the 500. Do you think I could have a drink now? I think I've earned it.
That was so.
I've just sort of thought about that phone call. Never occurred to me before. But after Corby spoke to Hobart, or Hogarth, whatever its name was, it seemed to me that... God! You really meant that?
Self-defense.
Is that you, Corby? This is Tom Wilde. Count yourself lucky, I've got what you wanted.
Harvey.
Hello, Harris.
As soon as I realized what Wilde was up to, I telephoned you. And you were lucky, Harvey. Extremely lucky, in my opinion. If Peter Bradford hadn't been with you, my bet is he wouldn't be here now.
How did you know about Wilde?
Well, I had a man tailing Corby. He knew that Corby had been in touch with Wilde. And he heard a rumor to the effect that Wilde intended to call on you. I checked with an informant of mine, and he confirmed the story.
Well, thank you for the warning. I'll do the same for you sometime.
I hope it won't be necessary.
Incidentally, how is Wilde?
Well, he'll survive. At any rate, we now know what they were after. This notebook belonging to your father.
You got Osgood's report on it?
He's just delivered it.
Yes, according to Osgood, it contains 3 numbers, 3 car registration numbers.
Nothing else?
Well, nothing of importance, unless Osgood's got it wrong, and I don't think he has. He says all the details here are irrelevant. They're all there to cover up the car numbers.
You located the cars?
Well, give us a chance, Sam. I mean, Osgood's only walked out of the door this very minute.
What are the numbers, then?
MKO 623P, THK 964N, and LMV 365K.
LMB 365K.
Why, do you know that number?
Yes, I do. At least I've seen it.
Where?
On a photograph belonging to Larry Voss.
A photograph?
Yes, on the night that Larry Voss was murdered, I found 2 photographs in his suitcase. One was of a yacht called Easy Living.
Well, we know about Easy Living. It belongs to our friend Corby. Dorset CID took a look at it yesterday afternoon. They discovered drugs estimated to be worth £150,000.
Yeah, but tell us about the other photographs here.
There's a photograph of a car, one that my father had owned, a Maxi LMV 365K. He sold it 3 months ago.
Do you know who you sold it to?
No, I remember asking him at the time. He didn't tell me.
Why should Larry Voss have a photograph of your father's car?
I can think of a reason.
What's that?
He wanted to be sure that he'd recognize the car when he saw it.
I don't follow.
Oh, sorry, Sam, neither do I. Well, what's on your mind?
I've got a theory. It is only a theory.
Well, come on, tell us about it.
Although my father was working for Hogarth, I have a feeling that he was two-timing him. And it's my bet that when you find the 3 cars, you will also find a supply of heroin.
What, hidden in the car?
Yes.
And your father helped himself to a consignment, or part of a consignment intended for Hogarth.
Yeah. In order to sell it. Voss knew or suspected what my father was up to, which is why I had a photograph of one of the cars and why he and Morgan searched my flat. Like Hogarth, they thought that I'd got the notebook.
Oh. How many people know that you've consulted us? In fact, that we have this notebook?
Well, the 3 of us and Osgood.
Nobody else?
Well, no one else as far as I'm concerned. I certainly haven't mentioned it to anyone.
Now, who is Hogarth? Have you any idea? Or haven't you got a clue like me?
Oh, I have a clue, Harris. I also have a plan of action. Whether you'd be prepared to go along with it's another matter. It's a bit unorthodox.
Well, that won't be the first time. Tell us about it.
Ah, hello, Margaret. Do come in.
Am I too early for you?
No, of course not. But I'm on the phone at the moment. Will you excuse me a second?
Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry about that, George. Yeah. Well, if you think it's important, why don't you send it to me? When? Tonight? Yes, 8 o'clock. That'll be fine. I'll be here all the evening. What do you think is in the envelope? Oh, what? Well, I can't remember my father saying anything about a notebook. It can't be very important. Well, anyway, bring it along. We'll have a look at it. Yeah, I'll see you tonight, 8 o'clock. Okay, bye. Sorry, it was George Adams, my father's solicitor. I believe you met him. Nice chap, but he does get very bogged down. Now, can I get you a drink?
Well,
I'm going to have a very large sherry. What would you like?
could I have a very small sherry?
Yes, of course. I expect you read about what happened the night before last. The night you came here and couldn't get any reply.
Yes, I read about it, but I must admit I was very confused. What did happen?
A stranger, somebody called Morgan, broke into the flat and was murdered. What he was doing here, who killed him or why, we just don't know. You said on the phone that the door was open when you arrived here.
It was slightly ajar. I rang the bell. I rang it several times, but nothing happened. In the end, I came to the conclusion you must have slipped out for a few minutes into one of the other flats.
What time would that be?
Oh, about 9 o'clock.
And that was when you saw the young man that you mentioned?
No, not when I was leaving. I saw him when I arrived, just as I got to the top of the stairs. The curious thing is, the reason I came here, the reason I wanted to see you was because, well, it may just be my imagination, but I have the feeling
What is it, Margaret?
I think your father's house has been searched.
Search?
Yes. The last time I was in Pennymore, the day before yesterday, I had the impression that someone else had been there ahead of me.
Really?
Everything looked perfectly normal. It may just be my imagination, but I don't think it was. I really don't.
Well. Oh, cheers.
Is this what you call a very small sherry?
Ah, Mr. Daly.
I got your message.
How kind of you to come at such short notice. Would you excuse me a minute? I'm on the phone.
Yes.
Won't keep you long. Sorry about that, George. A friend of mine's just arrived. Yeah, what were you saying? Well, yes, I'll be here all the evening. When? 8 o'clock will be fine. Look, I can hardly think the notebook you've got can be of any importance, or my father would have mentioned it to me. Yeah. Anyway, bring it along. Of course I will. 8 o'clock. See you then. Bye. It's George Adams, my father's solicitor. Awfully nice man, but a terrible fusspot. Do sit down, Mr. Daly.
You didn't do these.
Me? Oh, good heavens, no.
Well, whoever did must have been an admirer of mine.
Why do you say that?
Why? Because they're a copy of my work, dear boy, that's why. And not a bad copy either. Well, I'm flattered. You usually have to die before this sort of thing happens to you. Well, I was quite excited when I got your message. I gather it's to do with your new book.
Yes, I saw our mutual publisher the other day.
Henry Schofield.
Yes, when I told him the new book was coming on, he asked me to get in touch with you. He wants you to start work on the illustrations at once.
He does, before you finished writing it?
Oh, yes. So, let me get you a drink.
What did he want?
Ostensibly to talk about his book.
What do you mean? Ostensibly.
I mean just that.
Has something happened? Is it something to do with Jill?
No. I want to ask a favour of you, Mr. Bradford.
A favour?
Yes. But before I tell you what it is, I've got to make a phone call. Will you excuse me a minute?
Yes, of course.
I won't keep you more than a second.
Well, I'm in no hurry.
I'm trying to get hold of my father's solicitor, George Adams. He's a rather elusive character. I must have dialed this number half a dozen times in the past hour. Oh, help yourself to a drink.
May I have a scotch?
Yes, of course. Hello, this is Sam Harvey here again. Is George Adams available? You said that last time and the time before. Yeah, well, will you convey my apologies to Mr. Adams and tell him I'm sorry to interrupt his meeting, but I got to speak to him. Yeah, now, the matter is urgent. Yes, very. All right, I'll hold on. All day if necessary.
I think that's the lawyer.
George Adams, yeah?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Public concern, sir. Mr. Adams left over an hour ago.
Our friend should have arrived by now.
He's arrived. He's in the building.
Roger. Looks through in business, sir.
You're late, Mr. Hogarth. I was expecting you an hour ago.
Give me that notebook, Harvey.
Give you the notebook? I thought you were a businessman. This notebook contains information that's worth a great deal of money. So why on earth should I give it to you? I suggest you bid for it. Where should we start? 5,000? 10,000? 15?
Don't try to be clever. Just give me the notebook.
Listen, Randall, or Hogarth, or whatever you choose to call yourself, I don't think you quite understand the situation. I have this notebook. I have every intention of holding on to it. Unless you're prepared to pay a reasonable price for it.
What do you call a reasonable price?
Make me an offer.
What makes you think it's worth anything?
The fact that you're here.
Your father double-crossed me, Harvey.
Yes, I know. He was rather good at it.
My advice to you is don't try to emulate him.
That's the very last thing I wish to do, I can assure you.
You saw Morgan, hmm? You saw what happened to him.
I did indeed.
Then don't be a bloody fool. Give me that notebook.
I'll give you some advice. If you do decide to do something silly, try not to lose one of your cufflinks.
You saw the cufflink?
Yes, I saw it as soon as I entered the flat.
Why didn't you pick it up?
I was just about to when I heard Morgan cry out.
Morgan was dead. He was dead when I left him.
No, he died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Listen, Randall, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make you a proposition. You want this notebook. I need £5,000. Pay me the 5,000 now, tonight, in cash.
What?
No! It's all right, Walter.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. Harvey. Move!
Stay here. They're on their way.
Right, move.
Over there. Ask him. Get the woman. Right, let's go. Let's.
Well done, Harris.
Thank you, sir.
I think I owe Sam a drink for this.
No, I'm convinced my mother knew absolutely nothing about my father's activities. Not until they reached Heathrow. And then I'm afraid it was simply a case of what's good enough for Jason is good enough for Hannah.
Yeah. And what made you suspect that Randall was in league with his wife?
Early on, I had an uneasy feeling about them. A little too much emphasis on their mutual dislike of each other. Also, I couldn't understand why Hogarth hadn't broken into Pennymore. After all, it was my father's notebook he was looking for. Then I realized, of course, that if Randall was Hogarth, there'd be no need for him to break into the house. Margaret Randall had a key. Eventually, they realized they'd slipped up on this, and rather late in the day, invented a story about the house having been searched.
According to Harris, there was quite a feud going on at one time between Randall and Chris Daly.
Oh, yes. Randall threatened to sue Chris over an article she'd written. In the end, he had to back down, but I understand he swore he'd get even with her one day.
Presumably, then, that's why they invented the story about the boy.
They wanted to divert suspicion away from themselves, and Randall suddenly hit on the idea of throwing suspicion onto Chris Daly and her husband. To be truthful, he very nearly succeeded. At one point, I really did think that the Dalys were in league with my father, and those sketches had a particular significance. But let's face it, Randall had one piece of bad luck.
Yes, that cufflink.
Must have come loose during the fight with Morgan. He realized it was in the flat somewhere and told his wife to go out and get it. Well, she found it as soon as she entered the hall, but not before I'd seen it. Not before one of the residents had spotted her leaving the building.
Come in. What is it, Sergeant?
A memo, sir, from Superintendent Harris.
Harris, I should have guessed. Only the third one this morning. All right, Sergeant.
Right, sir.
What is it?
They found 2 of the cars. Your father had them in a warehouse near Slough. Obviously intended to pick them up later. And my God, you were right. Except it wasn't heroin. They've already discovered 3 kilos of cocaine. Haven't found the third car yet.
Well, that's that.
Sorry, sir. About your father, I mean. We all are, truly sorry. The media are bound to make a meal of it, I'm afraid. Especially as you made it clear that your sister and yourself were handing your father's estate over to charity.
Well, what else could we do? Still, not for you to worry. I've resigned anyway.
Oh, I had another message from the powers that be this morning. They're still hoping you'll change your mind.
No, I'm sorry, but...
Well, if you won't change your mind, will you do me a favor?
What is it?
Although you're on leave, you're still with us, officially, until the end of the month, right?
Yes, I know.
Well, I've had what amounts to an SOS from Market Cross. One of their best men, Ted Cooper, has been rushed into hospital with a slip disc.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I know Cooper.
Yes, well, unfortunately, he's right in the middle of a first-class murder case. Badly needs some help.
Send Harris. At least he'll keep you posted.
Oh, Sam, this case is right up your street. It really is.
You cooked this up. You're just trying to hook me.
Certainly not. Wouldn't do a thing like that, would I?
Yes.
You know what Cooper's like. He's obstinate. I mean, he must be in trouble, or he wouldn't have contacted us. I'll give you a chance to try out that new car of yours. What do you say?
You pay for the petrol?
Cheers.